Hi, my name's Robin Ashford, a Senior Director of Product Management at BMC, and I'm here today to tell you all about BMC Helix Data Manager, which is the new name for the product formerly known as Alderstone CMT. But before I do that, I'd like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to the organisers of Las Vegas Rug. It's events like this that really make the BMC Remedy community what it is today, so thank you. I joined BMC as part of the acquisition of Alderstone a year ago, but prior to that I spent 7 years developing Alderstone CMT and using it in the field. So I can honestly say it's a genuine pleasure to be talking about the product as a BMC product and from within BMC. Unfortunately, I can't be with you today, so this is going to be a virtual session with a live Q&A at the end. I look forward to your questions. I hope this is a useful session. Before we get started, I need to show this legal notice. There's some information I'm going to present today which represents BMC's future roadmap or features which aren't yet in our software. Please don't make buying decisions using information about the future of our products. BMC's plans may change. So with that out of the way, let's start with an introduction as to what BMC Data Manager is and what you can use it for. BMC Helix Data Manager, or HDM, is an ETL tool designed specifically for the Remedy platform. It's not just any ETL tool, it's the fastest data migration tool designed for the Remedy platform. The reason it's so much faster is we're not using the Remedy API to move data. Instead, we're moving data at the database layer. That gives us exponentially faster results than API-based tools like AR Export, AR Import, or DDM. HDM understands the underlying Remedy data model and allows us to move any related set of data from Remedy applications, including Remedy ITSM. As you're aware, there isn't a full entity relationship diagram for Remedy ITSM or any other Remedy custom application. The data model emerges from the Remedy workflow which is built in your ARS application from the relationships which are created between different forms. HDM discovers the workflow in any Remedy application and infers a data model. HDM is then able to use that data model to migrate related sets of data. That's a unique feature of the tool and allows us to address some unique use cases. For example, we're able to move an ITSM company and all of its related data out of a multi-tenant system and into a new system. I do want to underline here that HDM is a migration tool designed for Remedy ARS first and Remedy ITSM second. There are a number of features and configurations which are specifically designed for Remedy ITSM. However, you can use HDM to migrate and manage data for any Remedy ARS custom application. Along with HDM product itself, we provide configuration which allows you to migrate directly between different versions of ITSM. For example, you can migrate directly from ITSM 9.1 to the latest Innovation Suite 21.3 without needing to do multi-stage upgrades. We're able to do this because HDM is able to transform data as part of the migration, and it does that transformation using database level tools. So all those data transformations are very, very fast. We encapsulate all of that configuration in an entity called a migration pack. The template migration packs provided by BMC contain the data model and relationships between entities, the field mappings and the data transformations, absolutely everything that's needed to be able to move directly and upgrade between two different versions of ITSM. What's even cooler is that the template migration pack is designed to be fully configurable, so you can change any aspect of the behavior of the migration to suit your requirements. For example, you could exclude incidents which are older than 3 years old from the scope of an upgrade migration, and HDM will be able to do that without breaking the system data integrity because it understands the relationship between the incidents and all of the related forms. Although Remedy ITSM is a very complete package, we know that every customer adds overlays and customizations. These customizations mean that effectively every ITSM system is unique. It's these differences that can make data migration using legacy tools really difficult. We designed HDM to be able to discover the data dictionary for the source and target Remedy ARS systems and to automatically adapt the migration template packs to include your custom fields and custom forms. I do need to emphasize at this point that right now HDM is not a workflow migration tool. It's currently purely focused on data migration, and we need to use other BMC tools to migrate workflow. However, this is something we're looking at more closely for the future roadmap. As engineers, we wanted to build a tool that was easy to use. So although we've just added a command line interface for HDM, you can manage every aspect of the configuration and migration with an easy to use web UI. That web UI also allows us to see every detail of a migration in progress and manage exceptions and all of the other activities around a data migration. It's a tool for engineers, designed by engineers who've had hands-on experience of doing these data migrations. The two most important use cases for HDM are migration to BMC Helix SaaS and upgrading to the new converged containerized ITSM release. Using HDM, you can seamlessly migrate to BMC Helix SaaS, allowing you to migrate extremely quickly and with minimal operational impact. For migrations to the converged platform, HDM is now able to take data from ITSM, Smart IT, DWP, Smart Reporting, Business Workflows, Multi-Cloud Broker, and Virtual Agent and merge that into the new Innovation Suite platform. That's an essential use case which enables customers to get to this innovative new platform very quickly. I'll be talking more about the converged platform and containerization in the next session today at Las Vegas Rug. The most exciting news for BMC Remedy customers, whether you've got Remedy ARS or Remedy ITSM, HDM is now free for all use cases. You can download the software from EPD and use it for any of the use cases we're about to review or anything else you can think of. That's a fantastic consequence of the acquisition of Alderstone last year. So hopefully that's a good insight into what HDM is. Let's talk now about how our customers have used HDM. The first use case I'd like to talk about is migration to BMC Helix SaaS. HDM is now the standard way to migrate from an on-premises Remedy ITSM system to BMC Helix SaaS. We can upgrade directly from 9.1 and any version above that to the latest 21.3 release on BMC Helix SaaS without needing to do any on-premises upgrades or changes. HDM makes that migration fast, cost-effective, and very flexible. You can migrate directly from MS SQL or Oracle on premises. You can transform data to combine your migration with business transformation. You can clean up your data, removing older or junk data. HDM also enables migration of change data, including deletion, so you can move the bulk of your data to BMC Helix SaaS and then use HDM to move only the change data during the final outage and production cutover to BMC Helix SaaS. Because HDM can migrate deleted data safely, it means you don't need to impose an extensive change freeze during the project, which minimizes the disruption to your business operations. Because HDM is able to migrate data so quickly, it means you have a very short outage window, again minimizing the disruption to your business and making that transition to BMC Helix SaaS very, very smooth. Upgrades. Upgrades has historically been an area that we've used HDM a lot. HDM is a great way to upgrade, especially if you've fallen behind on your Remedy ITSM upgrades. Using the fresh install and migrate method, you can move from very old versions of Remedy ITSM directly to the latest release. The fresh install and migrate is a fresh install of the latest ITSM release. You then migrate your workflow to this new install and then use HDM to move all of your data. When you're making large version changes, it's much more likely that the workflow you've developed against the older version of Remedy ITSM application is going to need to be reviewed in the context of the new enhancements from BMC. This method allows you to selectively migrate workflow and ensures what you end up with after the upgrade is a clean, highly performant application. We've had great results using this method, which is effectively the same approach as we're using for migration to BMC Helix SaaS and for upgrades to the new converged Innovation Suite platform. Consolidation. This is one of those use cases that really shows the origin of HDM. We first had the idea for HDM when working with MSPs or managed service providers who were operating really large multi-tenant Remedy ITSM systems. And we saw for those customers the same challenges coming up time and time again with the management of data and companies, their customers that were hosted on those multi-tenant systems. Consolidation is one of those use cases that was surprisingly frequently the case that an MSP would want to merge multiple Remedy systems that they own together to reduce their costs. Now, there's a number of really quite difficult technical challenges with an operation like that. You've got overlapping ticket numbers, request IDs and group IDs in the data hosted on those different Remedy systems. You've got support engineers who work for the MSP who potentially have accounts across those multiple systems that need to be merged into one user account. We designed HDM from the ground up to be able to handle that complex consolidation use case. We can automatically transform ticket numbers, request IDs and group IDs in the data and make sure that data integrity is fully preserved to allow data from multiple systems to exist on the same remedy system. We can transform any data in the system to combine support groups or combine user records. Using this capability, we've successfully consolidated around a dozen remedy systems for MSPs. I would say this remains a complex undertaking, but HDM makes it technically possible, which it absolutely is not using API-based tools, certainly without any data loss. Archiving. When HDM performs a data migration, it always exports data to and from file. Combining this ability with HDM's ability to move or delete any related set of remedy data means we can use HDM to perform archiving on a remedy system. Now, there's a great implementation of archiving in Remedy ITSM that moves data to archive forms. However, that keeps the data within the database. You're not reducing the overall size of the database. Using HDM, we can move data out of the database and into either a standby parallel archiving database or to the file system. This can significantly reduce the size of the database using less disk space, which means smaller disks, which means faster backups, restores, and translates into a reduction in the total cost of ownership for your Remedy ITSM system. If your data is hosted in a parallel AR system, then it makes it very easy to inspect older data and actually easier than when it's held in the Remedy archive forms that aren't designed to be viewed directly. HDM can also unarchive data from disk, so you can restore data from disk back into a Remedy system if you've got an audit you need to comply with. HDM's export to file is to a flat file format, which is searchable using text-based tools, so that even if the data is stored on disk, you can easily search for specific data and restore that back into your Remedy system if you do need to comply with an audit. The latest version of HDM introduces a command line interface that could allow you to trigger exports and archiving automatically on a scheduled basis. I think that's a really interesting use case for HDM, and I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on whether enhancements to our Remedy ITSM archiving capability would be useful for your business. Separation. This is very much a feature designed for managed service providers managing multi-tenant systems. In some cases, an MSP may have a customer hosted on a multi-tenant system who doesn't want to comply with the rules of a shared platform and is willing to pay more for a bespoke service. HDM allows the MSP to move the company and all of their related data out of the multi-tenant system, removing it from that multi-tenant system and into a standalone instance. Staggered upgrades. At Alderstone, we found a number of our managed service provider customers were struggling with the logistical complexity of organising an upgrade for systems with a very high customer population. It's relatively easy to organise an outage across a single business with a single tenant system. It's much, much harder to get 100 different customers to agree on a specific date where they aren't doing something special. For MSPs facing this challenge, HDM enables the upgrade migration of waves of customers to the new upgraded platform. It's something I'd only recommend to an MSP where the complexity of managing support across two systems is less than the complexity of arranging a single upgrade window. Onboarding and offboarding. Again, these are two use cases that are really helpful for multi-tenant remedy systems. Let's start with onboarding. For some of the MSPs we've worked with, the process of onboarding new customers to a multi-tenant system was taking a long time and was fraught with manual errors. A couple of weeks of data loading in development was followed by another couple of weeks of data loading into QA, and then followed by another couple of weeks of data loading into production. Oftentimes, the defects in the data found during testing weren't copied back into the data load spreadsheets, meaning defects fixed in QA re-emerged after go live in production. Using HDM, after the initial data load into development, we can then promote the company foundation data from dev to QA and from QA to production in a matter of minutes instead of weeks. After that initial data load, the data load spreadsheets could be abandoned and any data fixes applied directly to the dev or QA system data to ensure a higher quality in production. HDM is not a tool for loading foundation data. You should still use the conventional Remedy ITSM tools for doing that, but what we're getting rid of with HDM here is the multiple data loads. You need to load into development, and from that point onwards, HDM takes over. I would like to highlight that HDM is not designed for promoting small chunks of data from dev to QA to production. It's a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I definitely recommend using D2P for those kinds of operations. Now let's take a look at offboarding use case. It's a natural part of managing a multi-tenant business and a multi-tenant system that sometimes customers will leave. Without HDM, it's not easy to remove the data for that customer from a multi-tenant system. This not only has an impact on the overall performance of the application, but it could have legal ramifications or contractual ramifications. We've used HDM to remove all of the data for a specific company leaving a multi-tenant system, improving performance and complying with contractual obligations. You can even hand the extracted flat file data over to the departing customer and say, thanks very much, here's your data, hope to see you again. Finally, let's look at our last use case on this slide, which is synchronization of non-production environments. This is a common problem for anyone operating Remedy ARS systems. How do you keep your non-production systems up to date with the changes being applied to the configuration in your production system? If you let the systems drift apart too much, then it can undermine the results of testing. Because your dev and QA environments won't have the same configuration as in production. You can copy the entire production database back to your non-production systems, but that can be very disruptive to any in-flight development or configuration work in the non-production environments. If you've got a really large production database and limited space in your dev and QA environments, it may not be possible to copy the entire database back to your non-production environments. And it's here where HDM can help. Your DBA can replicate the data dictionary tables and application data structures from production back to your non-production environments, and then you can use HDM to copy a subset of your ticket data and all of your configuration data back to those non-production environments. So the entire workflow and data configuration is fully synchronized, but with a fraction of your ticket data. HDM is also able to detect and convert environment-specific references in your ITSM application data, so they're appropriate for the new location. So if you've got references to your production load balancer in your data, HDM can convert all of those references to the development or the QA load balancer with a super fast database level transformation. You can also use HDM to export data related to any in-flight work you've got going on in your non-production environments to file prior to the database replication, and then restore it afterwards to minimize disruption. One of our customers was able to reduce their annual refresh of non-production from multiple weeks to just 1 day using HDM. So these are the main use cases for HDM, but I'm always being surprised by the kinds of things that customers have worked out they can do with HDM. This really is a super flexible and very powerful tool that you can leverage for a number of use cases I probably haven't even thought of. Okay, so as this is a Remedy user group, let's get down into some real technical detail. Let's start with the architecture. Here we can see on the left the three main architectural components: the HDM workbench, the repository, and the engine. The workbench provides us with a web UI. It's here we do the data mapping, the configuration, and we can configure and trigger execution of jobs. The repository is a Postgres database that stores all of the configuration about how to do migrations, the migration jobs, and the results of operations. The engine is actually what does the real work of data migration and manipulation. The engine is the only component that needs connectivity to the source and target systems. All of the data migration operations are run by the engine at the database layer. You don't need a full Remedy ARS stack in order to export or import data. That gives us a lot of flexibility when we're using HDM in the field. The engine does allow us to connect to a Remedy ARS system via the API in order to perform operations like building SLA targets or approval workflow after migration. But aside from this, the whole process is performed with direct database level migrations. Typically, we install all of the components into a single Windows virtual machine. However, it's possible to install the workbench, the repository, and the engine on different machines. You can also install multiple engine instances as long as they have connectivity to that repository. You may want to do that if you've got particular security constraints internally, but typically everything's on one individual machine. If we want to run a migration, then we're going to log into the workbench, submit the request, which then creates a request in the repository. The engine is regularly polling the repository for new jobs, and when a job is picked up, then the engine does the requested work and updates the progress in the repository. We can view the progress of a job through the workbench UI that's reading the latest status from the repository. HDM doesn't require any changes to the Remedy ARS server or to your application data structures to work, and was designed to stand as a separate component from your Remedy ITSM systems. That's really important in the context of upgrade migrations where you may want to keep your target system down to maintain data integrity. So let's talk now about application discovery and the analysis tools in HDM. I mentioned earlier that HDM discovers the data dictionary in your Remedy ARS system so that any data migration operation is tailored for your specific system. HDM is reading the data dictionary at the database layer. It doesn't need an API connection. We're reading from the data dictionary the modules, the forms, the fields, the indexes, and we're storing all of that data in the HDM repository. We also read the workflow to infer relationships. So we're using a configurable, heuristic-based relationship expert to understand what the workflow means. So for example, if you have a table field on the incident form, which shows worklog records, and a push field from the incident to the worklog form, then that's a set of information that HDM would use to infer a parent-child relationship between the incident and the incident worklog. We've already done all of this analysis work using HDM for Remedy ITSM. So this relationship inference is typically only used when we're working with a new custom ARS application or extending the migration packs to include custom forms that we may want to add into a relationship tree. Correctly understanding the relationships between Remedy forms is essential to enable some of those use cases we discussed earlier, where we want to migrate a related set of Remedy data like a company and its related data. Using this inbuilt automated analysis makes it really easy for us to extend our template migration packs when a new version of ITSM is released. We can compare different versions in HDM. There's a lot of capability in there to be able to understand your data model to make data migration as easy as possible. The discovery capability now also includes Innovation Studio applications and allows us to discover and move data for applications like DWP Catalog or Business Workflows or Multi-Cloud Broker and Virtual Agent. Those applications don't change much in their data model except between versions. They're not customizable in the same way as Remedy ITSM. Let's dig a little deeper and look at how HDM is migrating data. When we use the Remedy API to migrate data during the import operation, we're effectively pushing individual records into the AR server, which then allows Filter Workflow to act on the record. So if you want to do data transformation, you're doing individual set field operations on individual records. What's more, those individual records can be rejected during the import process, but other records may be accepted. For those of you who've performed large data migration operations using Remedy API-based tools, this is probably something that will be familiar, is the challenge in knife and forking individual records in that potentially have clashed just because they were imported in the wrong order. We decided to take a very different approach with HDM. We import data using SQL directly, so it's exponentially faster. We're also doing set-based import. So we import all of the records in a particular form all at once. That's very, very quick from processing, but it also means if something fails, it's a real failure. It's not just because we imported data in the wrong order and we've got a unique index clash. There's something wrong in our data that needs to be resolved. So that leaves a much, much cleaner system that we can then fix the data import issue and then re-import the data cleanly. So the whole of a form gets imported or nothing at all. So you're not having to knife and fork data in. There's a huge amount of features in HDM to accelerate the speed of data migration on top of it just going into the database. So we've got multi-threading. We're able for very large forms to break them up into configurable chunks of data that makes export and import much faster. We've got automated retry if there's network connectivity issues or issues that are recoverable. HDM can be configured to recognize those data messages and then retry an operation a set number of times. If we are unable to import data for a number of forms in a large data import, HDM is able to bundle all of those up and allow you to retry the import operation on just those records. We also have super exceptional reporting of the progress of an import, so you can see exactly what's going on at any one time. You can even see how long a particular form took to import the last time you did it, so you can compare and contrast. One of the great things about HDM that I love is the exception handling. You're able to see all of the exceptions within the tool itself. It's very, very rare that you need to go take a look at a log file. What we've also got is the ability, one of the most frequent errors that occurs is unique index violation errors when you're moving between different database types, or potentially when you're moving to a new version where there's a new index, a new unique index on a form. So HDM is able to analyze import errors if they're unique indexes and identify which records are causing the unique index clash, so you can go fix them. We've also got a distributed architecture, so you can have multiple engines. So if you've got security constraints, you can have one instance of HDM with an engine in different networks all communicating with that central repository. There's a huge amount of flexibility that we've built into the product. So we are able to do tree-based migrations of any dependent data set, and you can reconfigure those relationships in the tree at any time. You can add new forms into the tree. We can also do flat migrations where we're simply taking all of the data in a very flat structure. We can apply qualifications at any point within the relationship tree. So on this diagram here, on the right hand side for the screenshot, you can see we've got HPD help desk and a number of its related forms underneath. We can apply a qualification to our migration pack at the HPD help desk level, and that will effectively cascade down the rest of the tree. So let's say we just want to take data that's in an open status. HDM will apply that to the HPD help desk node when it's doing the export, and then we will only export work logs which are related to those open help desk tickets. It's a super powerful system that's very, very intuitive once you get to grips with how flexible this is. Every single aspect of the migration pack is fully configurable. You can cut and paste different components around the tree to suit your migration, and we've got real-time progress tracking, which is really, really valuable if you're the one sitting in front of the console during your final production cutover. You know exactly how far you've gotten through your migration and potentially how long something took last time. Data mapping is where HDM really, really shines. There are so many different capabilities we have for transforming data. Now, HDM's got some great algorithms that automatically maps custom fields. If you've got custom fields in your target and your source system that HDM doesn't recognize, it will automatically try and map all those together. But you can override those. So we've got conditional mappings, if-else statements based on the data in that specific record that can have different types of mapping in a particular field. We can do data enrichment, so we can look up data on the target when we're doing an import. We can look up data from the source when we're doing the export. We can also enrich our data from a mapping spreadsheet, so populating data, looking up data from within a spreadsheet. We can do custom mapping, so we can fall out to combine any of our other mappings together or to pull in database functions. We've also got the ability to transform data after we've landed it in the target system. So it's a super powerful, very intuitive UI that gives you full control over how a data migration is going to be run. One of the things that we wanted as engineers to build into the tool are lots of checks and balances to make sure that the data migration that we're doing is effective. So we've got the ability to run independently of the data migration, which gives us lots of great output on how many records it exported, how many records it successfully imported into every form. We can also run form counts against the source and a target system and compare those within HDM to identify where there may be differences and maybe discrepancies that we need to look into. HDM also reports when we're doing the discovery of the data dictionary. It can also report on how large the data is sitting in file and how large the indexes are. That's really helpful when we're planning future migrations. We've got comparison reports on application structure, and we can even compare application data between two different forms. So for example, if you've got customizations in sys menu items, which is a form that some people sometimes add customizations to, but BMC also customizes in ITSM, you can compare the data between two different forms and identify differences in individual records between those forms. So we're able to analyze the complexity of an application prior to doing an upgrade. So that gives you great information about how complex is this impending upgrade going to be. And as our final stop in our whistle-stop tour of the HDM user interface and its capabilities, let's take a look at system administration. On the system admin page, we've got a number of different capabilities that allow us to administrate different aspects of data in a remedy system. So here we can see the discovered data dictionary. We can also build approvals, build SLA targets and agreements. We can also apply the server reference updates I referred to earlier that are useful when we're moving data between different systems. We can also do data analysis by comparing records, and we can do bulk updates by applying changes to data that's already been migrated. Finally, as part of our technical deep dive, let's see a migration in action with HDMs. Let's walk through that process. So here in the diagram, you can see I've got a remedy server running, remedy ARS server running 9.1 and a target remedy ARS server running 21.3. Our first step is to run discovery. So discovering the target and source data dictionaries using HDM. We then create from our template migration pack a customized migration pack specifically tailored to include the custom forms, custom fields, which are present in our source and target systems. We can then use HDM to export that data out of our 9.1 underlying database to a file system, and then from that same file system we can use HDM to import data into our target 21.3 converged database. Finally, we're going to run post-migration updates to go transform the data in the target system to complete the upgrade migration. I'd like to switch gears now and start talking about our roadmap and some of the new features we've introduced in HDM. So what's new in the new BMC Helix Data Manager? In HDM 2105, we added in the ability to migrate to the new converged platform. I'll be talking about that a bit more in the session coming up after this one. So we're now able to migrate ITSM data, DWP catalog, Smart IT, and Smart Reporting. We've also added in the ability to migrate any data that sits in a database table, so generic database table migration. In HDM 21.3, which is due for release any day now, we will be able to add we're now adding business workflows, multi-cloud broker, virtual agent, and Innovation Suite Foundation data. We're also adding in a brand new feature, command line interface automation. Our next release of HDM 21.3.1 is planned for the end of January 2022, and it's in that release we'll be adding in the great capability to migrate Remedy Force data into Helix ITSM, giving Remedy Force customers a way to upgrade to a more modern, much more configurable platform. I mentioned earlier that we produce template migration packs which can be used as the foundation for doing migrations between different versions of ITSM and other applications. Here you can see the matrix for the applications that we're supporting in 2105 and in 21.3. So in 2105 we supported 7604 and above, upgrading to 2002 or 2008, and we supported migration to the converged platform only from 2002 and 2008. In the 21.3 release, we're expanding that significantly, so you can upgrade from 9.1 directly to the new 21.3 release. You can continue to upgrade to 2002 and 2008 from 7604. For Smart IT, you will be able to migrate from 2.0 and above. For DWP Catalog, you'll be able to upgrade from 2002 and above to 21X, and for DWP, which is actually a separate utility, you can migrate from any 19X version and above to 21.3. Innovation Suite, Virtual Agent, Multi-Cloud Broker, and Business Workflows, we only support from 2008 and above, 2002 and 2008 and above to 21X. I'd like to talk briefly about ITSM to Innovation Suite upgrades. If you do want to find out more information here, then please do attend the following session, which really focuses on this topic. All of the upgrades to 21.3 will use a staged upgrade method. So you'll create a new parallel system using Kubernetes or OpenShift, deploy an out-of-the-box deployment of 21.3, and then migrate all of your workflow customizations, and then use HDM to migrate up to the new release from 9.1 and above for ITSM, Smart IT and Smart Reporting, and for Digital Workplace Catalog and Digital Workplace 2002 and 19X. No data loss, all the customizations are retained. That's a really important use case for HDM following the acquisition last year. I mentioned earlier we're adding automation into HDM. This automation is effectively allowing you to use a command line interface or even REST API to connect to the HDM workbench, which will then allow you to run a number of processes automatically using command line parameters. So you can register a system, register file systems, discover data dictionaries, copy migration packs, adding in custom forms, and you can run export and import operations, including post-migration scripts, form counts, and form count comparisons. There are still a number of activities. Obviously, you still need to install HDM manually, importing migration pack templates and resolving any exceptions, including data mapping issues or export or import errors. We would still expect you to use the workbench to do those operations. However, this command line interface is genuinely exciting. Lots of really cool things that you can make this do. I mentioned earlier the use case of doing archiving. So here's an illustration of that process. We can see at the top we've got automation tooling using the CLI to call the HDM command line interface, which posts REST commands to the HDM workbench, and then the rest of the migration works in exactly the same way. Finally, I'd like to talk about our future roadmap. There are lots of features that we want to build into the tool. The primary driver of features is community-driven enhancements. We want to hear from you the features that you want to see in the product. Definitely one of the things on my list is to add in the capability to do DWP upgrade migrations. We also are looking very hard at how we accelerate and make it easier to move to containers and to move to BMC Helix SaaS. We're also looking at competitive migration. We'll be doing some more enhancements around Remedy Force, and we're certainly looking at making it easier for customers who are using some competitive solutions to BMC Helix to come to a better solution and make that migration much easier. We're seeing a lot of customers wanting to move from some of our competitors. Archiving is something I'm very interested in looking at, and as part of our overall theme of containerization, we're also looking at containerizing HDM. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope this was a useful session and gave you the technical insight that you were looking for. It's now time for our virtual Q&A, which I'll be joining live. I look forward to your questions.